There's a lot of talk nowadays about bringing back American manufacturing.
You got to bring manufacturing jobs back to America. It's a good thing.
But few people are talking about how exactly this is going to happen. Added to that, a lot of us are wrong about what the problems truly are and what it's really going to take to fix them. We've spent the past 50 years sending our production overseas, and it's not going to come back overnight. But we can bring it back, and in this video I'll explain how.
Jobs and factories will come roaring back.
Revitalize American manufacturing.
Rebuild American manufacturing.
The goal is to rebuild the manufacturing sector in America.
I remember as a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, there was a huge push to buy American. Made in the USA was stamped on all sorts of things, and commercials like this ran on TV.
Ask for the Made in the USA label, because it does matter.
To all of us.
Better believe it matters to me.
Ask for and buy Made in the USA.
These commercials were meant to encourage people to buy products made in the USA before buying products made overseas. This was at a time when jobs were being outsourced, which really started in the 1970s, but hit a fever pitch in the 1990s. But here's a question that I have for you. How much would you be willing to pay for the same product, but made in the USA? I'm talking about two things, two products held side by side with no difference other than where they're made. How much would you pay for that American product? Would you pay 5% more, 10% more, 20%, 50% more? Think about that for just a minute. Now, this is just not some theoretical exercise. Someone actually ran this experiment. There is a serial entrepreneur out there whose name is Ramon Van Meer. He was even on Shark Tank once.
Let's do it.
One of his companies is called Athena, and they manufacture filtered shower heads. His most popular shower head normally sells for around $129, and it's mostly manufactured in China and Vietnam. Now, when tariffs jumped earlier this year from 25% to 170%, they set about looking at the possibility of manufacturing in the US. So here's what they did. They located a US supplier that could make their product, but they found that the US-based suppliers are more expensive, which is not a surprise. And so in order to make a profit, they'd have to sell their made in USA version of the shower head for $239 as opposed to $129 for the product that they make overseas. So they decided to run an experiment to see what consumers would do when presented the two options. As small business owners, we've heard it 1,000 times. I'll gladly pay more to support American made. We wanted to believe it, so we put it to the test. So they launched a secret landing page, giving over 25,000 customers the chance to vote with their wallets. And the results were brutal. Not a single customer purchased the American-made version, and only 24 people even added it to their cart. The imported version sold hundreds of units during that time, proving that price, not patriotism, was the deciding factor as to whether or not someone would buy. So what does this experiment tell us about American manufacturing? Well, it highlights a few of the core challenges of reshoring production to the US. First is cost barriers. Domestic manufacturing is significantly more expensive due to things like labor costs, but also supply chain limitations and regulatory hurdles, among other things, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Then there is consumer behavior. While people say that they support American-made goods, most won't pay the premium when given the choice. So let me ask again, how much more would you pay for an American-made product? $239 is about 85% higher than $129. Based upon this experiment, 85% is clearly too high, but would you spend $219, which is about 51%, or $199 or $159, which is about 21%? Now, as we go down that scale and get closer and closer to parity, I'm sure that there are going to be some people who will buy an American-made product at a higher price point. But honestly, and especially in this economy, most people would not pay more at all. And the price would have to be real close before most consumers would change their behavior and actually buy something that's American-made versus something that's cheaper and made overseas. So cost is definitely a factor, but when it comes to manufacturing overseas and manufacturing in China specifically, there are a lot of misconceptions that need to be cleared up. And some of us Americans are just uninformed about the facts. So we need to set the record straight and be honest about what our challenges really are and what we're up against. But before we get into that, I want to talk about this video's sponsor, electric e-bikes. So their e-bikes are awesome, and they just sent me their newest model, the XP4, and this thing is super fun to ride. It's a huge improvement from the XP3 model, which I also have. I particularly love the updated controls, the upgraded throttle, and the built-in blinker. Electric e-bikes are perfect for riding around the neighborhood or even for long distances. The XP4 has a range of 85 miles on a single charge. It can also hit speeds of up to 28 miles an hour, but I prefer to keep it around 20 in the neighborhood. So whether you live in a neighborhood like me, or a city, or the country, electric e-bike could be just right for you. So check them out using the link in the description or the QR code here on the screen. And if you order your new electric e-bike using my code, DIY with Dave, at checkout, you'll also get a free bike cover. So check them out. And thanks again to Electric e-bikes for sponsoring this video. So as I mentioned before, there are a lot of misconceptions that Americans have about manufacturing generally and overseas manufacturing specifically. Some of us are just dead wrong. So let's clear the air and talk about what's really going on. Now, one of the first assumptions that many people have is that the reason that the prices on goods coming in from Asia is lower is because of low wages. But it's so much deeper than that. And to illustrate exactly what I'm talking about, I want to play you this clip from an interview that Apple CEO Tim Cook did with Fortune magazine.
There's a confusion about China that, and let me at least give you my opinion. The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor cost. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. And that is not the reason to come to China from a supply point of view. The reason is because of the skill and the quantity of skill in one location and the type of skill it is.
It's sobering, isn't it? Now, it is true that wages in China are still lower than they are in the US, but they've been rising for decades. And it isn't really about wages anymore at all. It's about skills and expertise that are present there in China and just don't exist in the US in the numbers that we need. It goes even deeper than that, though. About a year ago, I made a video about Craftsman Tools and their attempts to reshore tool manufacturing to the US from Asia. Long story short, it didn't go well. It was a failure. Now, a lot played into that, and you can feel free to go back and watch the entire video if you like. But one of the biggest challenges that they had was finding the proper tooling and getting it set up and calibrated correctly. Tooling is critical in manufacturing because it ensures precision, efficiency, and consistency in production. It involves creating specialized tools like dies, molds, jigs, and fixtures that shape and assemble materials into finished products. Without good tooling, your quality is going to be garbage and you may not be able to manufacture at all, which is what ultimately happened to Craftsman. Now, in that same interview, Tim Cook went on to address this point specifically.
The products we do require really advanced tooling. And the precision that you have to have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here. You know, in the US, you could have a meeting of tooling engineers and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China, you could fill multiple football fields. It's that vocational expertise is very deep. Very, very deep here.
So here's the real problem. Expertise, or vocational expertise, as Tim Cook called it. We don't have it. We don't have it in a lot of different areas that we need it. Honestly, it doesn't seem like we're all that interested in creating it. To illustrate what I mean by that, let me ask you a question. How many of you have kids or know of younger people who are going into manufacturing? What percentage of the young people that you know are going to college to become an engineer or an expert in tooling or an expert in manufacturing? While there may be some, I'm guessing that many of you don't know anyone going into a field like that. So what do young people study in school? Well, here's a graph of undergraduate degrees given by colleges in the US for the past 10 years or so. From this graph, you can clearly see that degrees in engineering and computer sciences are actually down. And here's the crazy thing. Those clips that I played earlier from Tim Cook, they aren't from a few weeks ago or a few months ago. That interview was given in 2017. That was 8 years ago. This is not new. We've known about these issues for a really long time, and we've done little to nothing about it. Our education system has failed us. Our leaders have failed us. One of the biggest problems has been the availability of student loans for college. There was essentially no limit and no review of whether or not a student would be able to pay back the loan based upon their career choices. This free flow of money caused colleges to increase their prices. In fact, here is a graph of data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics showing the inflation of college fees and tuition next to the regular inflation rate in the economy. College costs are up nearly 300% since the 70s, almost double the inflation rate for the rest of the economy. The burden of those increases is being borne by our young people who take out loans and can't pay them back, and it's shameful. It's a drag on the economy, and to make things worse, the areas of study for all these graduates are not what we need in the long term to ensure American competitiveness. Now, I personally don't think that the answer is to do away with the Department of Education altogether, but there definitely have to be changes. Colleges need to be held accountable for the value of the education that they provide. Are they actually helping their graduates succeed and get into profitable jobs, or are they laughing all the way to the bank while their alumni struggle for decades under the weight of their student loans? Perhaps we need lower interest rates on loans given for certain degrees, or set up loan forgiveness programs for certain degrees or jobs, similar to what may already be in place for some nonprofits or government work. I bring up education because that is one of our biggest problems. Not our only problem, but one of our biggest. Our education system is not currently built to train our young people for the jobs of the future. There's a huge lack of engineering, math, and technical skills in our current workforce, and if we're going to compete against China and the rest of the world, we need to step up our game. So education is a huge part of it, but it is only one piece. Next is things like government incentives. Now, the government does have some programs to give loans to companies that are on the cutting edge. For example, the government just gave a huge $6.5 billion loan to Rivian, which is a company that manufactures electric vehicles. Now, you may say, now, don't we have a deficit issue and don't we need to stop spending on things like that? Well, yes, we do have significant deficit challenges and we absolutely need to deal with it. But big investments like these pay off. First of all, they're loans and they're going to be paid back. Secondly, they create jobs and support American manufacturing and technology. These kinds of loans allow companies like Rivian to compete with Chinese firms and other firms from overseas, and there are very few investors who can afford to put up $6 billion to any company. Next, we need to change our focus. We will never be able to compete with China on certain things like low-value items. The fact that they make a lot of toys or clothes isn't really a huge concern for us. We should focus on high-value, technologically advanced manufacturing. These are things like microchips and electric vehicles. These are areas where we could leverage automation and efficiency. That said, there are still going to be some areas where we're going to have difficulty competing. And this is where we need reliable partners. We need allies like Canada and Mexico and Europe with whom we can trade for lower value parts or raw materials. We need to diversify our supply chain and bring things closer to home so that we can withstand disruptions like another COVID or a ship getting trapped in the Suez Canal. We need to stop antagonizing our friends and start working together. The big threat here is China, not Canada or Mexico. Now that brings me to tariffs. Tariffs have their place. We may need to add tariffs to things like microchips or electric vehicles or solar panels, but we need to be strategic about how we do it. And I'm afraid that what we've seen recently is not strategic at all, and it's doing far more damage than good. There's a quote from Teddy Roosevelt that I love. It was in the early 1900s, and he had modernized the US naval fleet, painted it bright white, and sailed it all around the world as a show of American might. His famous saying was, "Talk softly, but carry a big stick." It seems like right now we're screaming at the top of our lungs about how big our stick is, but the truth is it's not as big as it used to be. This is a national crisis, and it's worse than you think it is. We are quickly losing dominance in multiple key fields, and we need to be unified and focused on fixing this problem and not taking actions that make it worse. There's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist out there named Thomas Friedman who has been studying and reporting on and traveling to China for decades. He was recently interviewed by Ezra Klein, and this is what he said specifically on Chinese innovation and electric vehicles.
I came to China after COVID. I said, wow, when I was last here, Xiaomi was a phone company. I came back, they were a car company. When I was here last, Huawei was a phone company. I came back, they were a car company. So China realized it could not compete with combustion vehicles with America. And so basically they put their cell phones on wheels. It is a seamless digital experience from the rest of your life. It is just so far ahead of anything I've seen here.
It used to be that China was the workshop and the US was the center of innovation. We would come up with the ideas and China would build them. That isn't true anymore. They have the expertise, capacity, factories, people, and they're now innovating on their own. To meet this challenge, we need to be unified. We can't afford to get distracted. We need to work together within our own borders, within our own country, but also with our allies to shore up our supply chains. We need to revolutionize our education system and focus on the jobs of the future. We need to invest in innovative companies and industries that will bring about the next big thing. We can't afford to sit on the sidelines and just wait for everything to come across to us. I think that we can do it, but I want to know what you think. What are your ideas for bringing back American manufacturing? What are some of the challenges that you've seen? What do you think it's going to take for us to become more focused on this problem and to do a better job? Thanks again for watching. As always, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.